Welcome back to Studio Wesley Annex, the audiovisual podcast where we break down the lectionary text of the week. I'm your host, Sam Sells-Williams, and I'm joined by the girls today. We're having the fun girly-pop episode as we were talking about beforehand. And I'm gonna start, not to immediately throw someone under the bus in this episode, but I'm gonna start with Caitlyn, who's the only one who didn't dance during the intro. So let's talk about that. Caitlyn, how are you? And also, why didn't you dance with this amazing intro?
Sam, you did not have to throw me under the bus like that. But
I see everybody's cameras. I see what was happening.
But you didn't have to throw me under the bus. No, I was tapping my chair. I'm not the answer. No, this week's it's been okay. It's been a really long week. If you've listened to the other podcasts I've been on, you know that my classroom has had a lot of sickness. And we're back again with hands, foot, and mouth. So,
yay! Let's go! We love when the babies are all sick and bringing the germs everywhere.
Yes. So hopefully, it will be contained, and it's just one. But right now, it's too early to tell. But it's been an okay week. I'm excited to be here today, though.
At least it's a Friday. At least you're done. At least you get a little bit of a break. Going over Grace. Grace, how are you doing today?
I'm really good. Am I? I don't know. I'm good for now. Because we're on this girly-pop episode. So we had Fridays. What was it? Fridays with the guys.
Fridays with the guys was last
AKA
episode.
And then today it's just girly-pop, the way God intended. No, I'm well. I was trying to embrace new foods and eat cucumbers. And then I got the wrong size cucumber because I got miniature and they weren't miniature. And then my ranch was expired.
Full size cucumbers with no ranch.
It was like a moderate size cucumber. Okay, look, I'll show the crowd. This is not a miniature cucumber.
That is a cucumber.
Right? And so, but I also have a kitchen sink cookie from Panera. So
Ooh.
The world is balancing. Right. No, exactly. Ooh, is exactly correct.
Ooh. A soft Panera cookie right now sounds really good.
Yeah. Do I have late work that I need to turn in as soon as we finish this podcast? Maybe, but it'll be in by the time this is released. So.
That's fair. A week from now, it'll be released.
Inshallah, yes, it will.
Allison, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. It's been a stressful week, and I've been sitting in this same spot since 8 a.m., so I'm a little tired. I meant to caffeinate before this, and I didn't, but I did eat 2 Reese's Oreo cookies, so I'm hoping those save me. Also, I want to thank you, Sam, for considering my toddler rock a dance to the opening song and not calling me out.
I was dancing first, and then I saw you start toddler rocking, and I was like, wait, Allison's joining in. And then I saw Grace was getting into it. You guys couldn't see, but Grace was really going for it. And I was like, let's go. And because of the order you guys are in, I was going down the list, and then I looked at Caitlyn, and I was like, okay, Caitlyn, come on. Caitlyn, party up. And that's okay. We had a toe tap going on. With that, Allison, don't unmute. Do you want to keep going with the opening prayer?
Yeah, I totally didn't look at the schedule to see that was me, but I've got this. We're good. We're ready.
Keep it going.
God, I want to ask that you guide us and center us as we walk through these texts today, that we are pulling from them what you think we need in the moment. That we are pulling from them what we all could need, what each other could use to hear, and that we are just thinking about not only these texts, but everything going on around us in the world and our society, and how we could be using them to understand more and to help people. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. We're just gonna keep going with the energy we're bringing in today. Grace, you get a Jeremiah text. I don't know how you're feeling about a Jeremiah text. How are you feeling about getting assigned a Jeremiah text?
What do you have against Jeremiah, Samuel?
No,
Cyrus Williams?
listen. I'm getting to the point because now
This is the
I pick
microphone.
the order and I pick the text who's getting what, that I'm starting to sense the vibe on what people like and what people don't. And I have no idea how you feel about Jeremiah yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm learning.
Well, the thing is that I've been trained on all of these, allegedly. So I should appreciate, like them or not, appreciate them at least. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Jeremiah. I feel bad for the guy because, like, I get it because the story along like the prophet Jeremiah is so very like, God, like, why? Like, why do you want me to do this thing? I'm like, I'll do it. Like, I'll do it. But are you? And so I get that and I appreciate that. Takes one, real recognizes real. But for my text today, we have Jeremiah 29, verse 1, and then verses 4 through 7. And essentially what it is saying to me, especially when we look at like verse 7, it says, "But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare." And so to me, this, and I don't remember if this is the turning point or not. I know there's like the timeline of Jeremiah is like debated. The plot line of Jeremiah is debated. We don't really know much about like the book of Jeremiah anyway, or the man if he existed. But what this is telling me, if this were to be a turning point, right? Because like it says this is Jeremiah's letter to the exiles in Babylon. This just makes me think like it's time to go into community. Because like all the like previous part of it is this instruction, like there's thus says the Lord of hosts, which like whenever you see a thus says the Lord, like put your listening ears on, because like this is a big announcement. Or like lo. So when we have thus says the Lord, I'm like, what is the Lord thus saying? And there's all these instructions about like build houses, live in them, plant gardens, eat from them, eat what they produce, like take wives and have sons and daughters, take wives for your sons, give your daughters in marriage that they might bear sons and daughters, multiply there, do not decrease, but seek the welfare of the city and pray to the Lord on its behalf, because in its welfare you will find your welfare. And so I don't know. It's just kind of interesting because I can imagine that maybe these folks have been frustrated for a while. They've been in exile. Like they've had a lot of really big feelings, to put it at like the most inaccurately calm version. But yeah, I think like my welfare has to mean your welfare, and your welfare should mean my welfare. And it means that all of us are successful together. And it makes me think of like the government term welfare, right? Because this is like a care, at least the way that I think of it. I know that like there's plenty of people with a lot of different feelings about government welfare. I get a government check, plenty, so I'm super grateful for it. But like the flourishing of all is what we're aiming for here. And that starts with your own intentions around who gets to flourish or not. So those are my thoughts on Jeremiah. I would love to hear anyone else's thoughts on Jeremiah after all of that.
I don't have very many thoughts on Jeremiah. I think it is just direction. Verse 5 of the assigned text, it says, "Build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so that they too may have sons and daughters."
No, you're right. Like, I do feel like this, you know how sometimes when you're looking at the lectionary and you're like, well, I know I'm not using that one because like it just seems like a random thing on its own. And like it very well could make sense in the context of like the full chapter or the full book or the full Bible. But when you look at this, you're just like, yep, those are words. And I can tell that they're instructions. Sure.
I'm going to jump in on that part for a second before Allison goes. Cause like, I actually don't feel as icky about that section of all of 6 as I thought I would, because of the context of like obviously we're in the historical context where like we are giving people away to marriage, which is a very like outdated way to think about things. But if we're looking at it from this concept, the idea of like, go make community, go like make part in this space, increase the community, increase the ties together with people, plant yourself in this area so that you and it prospers. I actually don't mind that, even though it is coming from this very like historical, like weird area of like phrasing. I think the idea of like, no, you are in this place and it is really hard right now, and you are in exile. Everything around you is not going well, but now is the time to make communal bonds and reach across and connect with others. So I actually kind of like that part. Allison, I want to hear your thoughts, and then I'll come back because I might have a question to circle around.
I was feeling more icky about it until you popped in, Sam, and so now now I don't know where to take it anymore.
I'm glad that I popped in.
Because I was feeling icky, and I was going to talk about how much I didn't love verse 6, and then you were like, actually, though, what if we just centered around community? And I was so now I don't know what to add.
You can talk about the icky part. You can 100% disagree and talk about the icky part.
No, but the thing is, I see it, right? Like I see what you're saying, and so I often find I've been in a bad mood all week. And so I often find when I'm in a bad mood, I look at text, and sometimes I pull out things that are like not necessarily the best part of the text because I'm just like angry at the world. And so I'm taking what you just said to me, and I'm like, okay, but actually I think I'd rather sit where you just said. Like, I don't even know that I want to speak on like the ickiness that was in my brain before, because I like the thought of like finding that in this verse in the way that you did instead. So I don't know that I have much more to add.
Okay, then I have a question for everybody. I haven't done like this kind of question in a while. I'm going to ask it, and then we can go in the same order that y'all presented in. So with Grace's specific interpretation of this text of like, to the people in exile, to the people going through a lot right now, the answer that we're given is to like embrace community and make those ties and make those connections. As Allison said, the week's been interesting. The state of the everything is a lot right now. And so what are some ways right now that you are increasing your community? And not necessarily like, what is the big grand work you're doing? The reason I asked this question is because like I'm doing poker nights with my friends, and it's so silly and it's so random, but it's been really helpful to like have a semi-consistent thing that we're doing. And like, it has been a really good way to like connect with people, different people coming in, different people coming out. Because I feel like all of us in some way, this is not some big gesture, but like, what are you doing right now with the people around you that you need in your community?
I'm going to work. I had a friend stay this weekend. We've been hanging out a lot, but I think that is something that I've been lacking on, hanging out with my community. I've just been really busy. I work almost 12 hours a day, so it's hard to find the time. And I definitely need to start because I can see the difference in myself.
I think like I keep my community small. Like I have never been someone who's liked being around a million people all the time. And so I think for me, it's more of like just making sure I have something planned with somebody in my community, if that makes sense. And I try to like sprinkle it with different people. That way, like I'm getting the exposure to all of my people are getting exposure. And so it's like, I'm just kind of like these little things here or there. Like literally this weekend, I am going to go to Pilates in the farmer's market with one of my bridesmaids, just because like, I was like, I want to hang out with you. I want to see you and hang out with you. What can we do? I want to go to Pilates, and I'd already planned to go to farmer's market. Do you want to come? Like literally just inviting like in random things, like, and also that too of like things I already have planned that are so small that I'm like, do you want to come? You just want to come do the thing with me? And I think that's probably like where I'm finding it right now, is just making sure that I always have something with someone going on.
So I was looking for a specific quote because, Sam, when you asked what we're doing to maintain community and to like live in community, my answer is that I go to the gay bar on Thursday nights like it's my Sunday service. Specifically, there's this one, it's called Heretic, which is also such a fun little name. It's in Atlanta, and they do line dancing on Thursday nights. Am I always line dancing? No. But you bet your butt, when the church clap comes on, I will be dancing to the church clap, because I don't know, there's something about it that it's so campy when you're doing church clap at the Heretic. And then there's like other really fun dances. But the quote that I was looking for, this was by Dan Savage during the AIDS crisis. So like, take that context, and that's a wildly like, it's a different situation than the situation that we're in. And I think that there's a lot of like overlap in the crises that we're all dealing with. But Dan Savage said, during the darkest days of the AIDS crisis, we buried our friends in the morning, we protested in the afternoon, and we danced all night. And it was the dance that kept us in the fight, because it was the dance we were fighting for. And I think that's so beautiful. And like, it's very true, because like, no matter what, we're there on Thursday night. It's not always the exact same people. We're meeting new people every time too, because it's like there's a slew of characters at the gay bar, as you could imagine, and it is just wonderful and magical and holy. And I was really tired yesterday, and I was like, ugh, like I woke up from a nap. I was like, I don't really want to go, and I was like, no, I'm not missing church. And it's just a really special time. And like I have like me time as well, but that's a really holy, important time to feel like the world's not crashing and burning for just like 3 hours.
Yeah, that was so good. But all three of those responses coming from very different parts. I'm really glad I asked that question. We're gonna keep going to our psalm today. Caitlyn, you got the psalm. You ready?
I'm ready. So when I initially read through this Psalms, I have Psalm 66 and a few verses from it, 1 through 12. When I initially read through it, the few verses that stuck out to me were 10 through 12, which says, "For you, God, tested us. You refined us like silver. You brought us into prison and laid burdens on our backs." And I think I've probably said this so many times, but I'm a firm believer that God gives us battles and trials for certain reasons and for certain opportunities to help others and for us to grow and strengthen our foundation in Him. And I think that's something that I feel like I'm always going through it, but currently going through. And so I just find peace in knowing that God never leaves us, but He does give us things it's so commonly said, but that's not going to break us, but that we're going to be able to grow from and learn from. And so I found a lot of peace in that today, reading it.
I think when I read through this really quickly before we started, I was also kind of sitting in those verses. I want to say first, funny note that yours said something, I think it was verse 11, about prison. I don't remember exactly how it was phrased. In the Common English Bible, which is the one I read, it says trapped us in a net. And all I can think of is like a big like butterfly net. And they're like, I gotcha, got him. And so hearing what you said really helped contextualize it in my head a bit, because I was still picturing God with like a butterfly net and be like, ha, and like catching us just for fun. No, I think I was sitting in those verses like, I don't necessarily, my faith does not necessarily align with kind of what you're sharing, Caitlyn. And I think that's okay, right? That we all have these different things that we believe in, these different paths that we take. But I did also sit in these verses. And I think the reason I did is because some of what they were saying feels like the world right now to me. And so like, it does feel like there is some sort of trial thing happening right now. And so while like our faith, like the things that we believe in, and when it comes to like trials and tests and things can be different, I think it's interesting that like we both pulled in from that text that like there's things happening right now. And when I was reading it, that those verses in particular were like, yeah, it does feel like we've been through fire right now. And so I just, all that to say is like, I think it's interesting to see like the different things that we believe and the different things that we bring to the table and how they can kind of still align within the text as we're reading them.
Everything Allison just said in those words and in that order. I was going to say very much the same thing of like, I've never been that way of like, I don't think that God gives us like those kind of challenges for a reason. I think we can find reason in it and we can grow from it. And I think that is a holy thing. But I also do feel like right now we have a lot of burdens on our back. More like 12 is the one that hit me, like Allison pointed out, of like, we went through fire and water. And I think, again, all three of us are taking the same verse and putting very different faith spins on it. Cause my key to all of this is the last part, but you brought us to a place of abundance. Of like, I personally my like faith doesn't align with the like, you brought us into prison, like you did this to us, God, but it does fully align with the like, but you brought us to a place of abundance. Like, we have been through all these things. These are now past tense because you were with us and you brought us to a place of abundance.
This is one of my favorite Bible verses. Psalm 66 verse 12. And so I want to read it in my version as well. And then I'm going to read you kind of a different version of this. So this is the NRSV UE. You let people ride over our heads. We went through fire and through water, yet you have brought us out to a spacious place. And like, I'm not one to write in my Bible, but I highlighted this one. I highlighted it because the wonderful boys of One Direction also have a song called Through the Dark. And the chorus says, oh, I would carry you over fire and water for your love. And I would hold you closer and hope your heart is strong enough. When the night is coming down on us, we will find our way through the dark. And so it's a very like, I don't know, it's a very like Irish kind of like dun, 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 dun. And it's like, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like maybe I can't get through it. But I also have a fire and a water symbol tattooed right here, like kind of near my heart, because of that. Because it's like I'm like holding the fire and water with me. And like it's just like a reminder that like, again, like through community, through us taking care of each other, that like we can get through it. And there's also something about the Psalms for me of like, you're allowed to blame God and thank God in like the same breath, or like two breaths that like supersede each other. I hope that's the right use of that word, supersede. If it's not, it's a Friday Annex, so it really doesn't matter. But I supersede, right? Because like one of them is superseding the other one. Thank you, Samuel Stiles Williams, for looking that up. But yeah.
No, I nodded and then was like, actually, I don't know if I'm right, but you were right. Like one takes the place of the other. One is more. Yeah. You were right. You're right. We're keeping all this
Maybe
in, by the way.
Maybe not taking place, but like they're like, oh, of course we are. This is theological
This is learning
and debate. This is learning. We're right. Teaching you words.
Exactly. Don't say we never taught you anything on Annex.
Yeah. But anyway, like there's really something about the fact that these like complaints and like blames and thanks can all kind of be right next to each other, all jumbled up in this like really nasty, beautiful poem song thing of like, you know, God, what the heck? What the hell even? And then like, but like and then you also brought us out to a spacious place. And so I don't know, there's just something really beautiful about that, because I also like, I'm figuring out how I feel because like I feel like I'm leaning more towards Allison and Sam of like I don't think that God like intentionally gives us like struggles. I'm a Methodist through and through. I think we have free will, and because of that, like the world does what the world does, and we as humans choose to do what we as humans will choose to do, and then God's kind of like making all these really happy, wonderful things happen with it, and like we get to learn, right? Like the whole thing is to learn, but I think there is something about like I can also imagine God though, and honestly, Caitlyn, I'm glad you mentioned this because I think it like developed my theology just a little bit more because I can imagine God sitting there and being like, okay, I could fix this right now, or I'm seeing like you're on the breakthrough, like you're on the verge of a breakthrough about something. So still maybe not like giving us the hard thing, but like believing in us and like knowing our capacity to like make it through a thing in the middle of making good things happen too. But either way, One Direction wrote Psalm 66 and it's beautiful.
Okay, so I have to make an amendment because were you trying to say proceeds? Because now I said the definition of supersedes, and then you were like, well, it's not in place of the other, and now I'm realizing I think we're just saying different words.
Yeah, I think maybe proceed like that they can all be next to each other, that like one can come after the other, they can come after the other. So maybe proceed, or like Mike, maybe this is your time to just like flash the right word on the screen and make us all look.
Here's what we're gonna do, Mike. I'm gonna open my mouth, and you're gonna put text and an audio of the correct answer. Okay, I just said the right answer.
You're so
I'll give it to you longer. I'll give it to you longer if you need it. And Mike, if you don't put anything in this moment, I'm gonna be because I know you, and I know it's probably gonna be zooming in on my screen right now. But don't do it. Don't do it. Find us the right answer.
Do it.
Don't do it, Mike. Don't do it, Mike. I love you, Mike. Please.
Coexist, to exist at the same time or in the same place.
Yeah. There's a lot of fire and water going on kind of everywhere. And like going back to our community note as we transition to break, I do think it's such an interesting time right now in the world where obviously there's a lot going on politically, like environmentally, like there's just a lot happening at once everywhere around the world. But also because of all the different layers that are going on, everyone's always going through their own stuff, but also everybody is feeling it in very different ways. So I do think from the community lens, it is interesting to come on and to talk with people and to connect with people and realize how much we're all going through very different things and feeling it the same way, or going through all the same things and feeling it different ways. And so as we transition to break, I hope the question I want to leave you with as we take our break is like, are you connecting with community more in this time? If so, how? If not, is that something that you think you need? And what does community look like in this moment that's different for each person? Allison wants a very small community. I usually have a very small community, but sometimes I want a really big community that's really loud. And so it like all of us in this moment where everybody is feeling so many things, we all need different ways to get through it. And so what are some things that you're doing to help your community or to help yourself through this moment? Think about that. And we'll be back after this.
What's up? Welcome back, everybody.
Hey guys, we're gonna be playing. I actually, if I say cut, but it's too funny, it's gonna get put in. So I'm not gonna do a funny voice. Hey guys, we're gonna be playing. Like, don't put any of this in. We're back from break. I don't have an intro prepared because we talked about a lot of things on our break that are not going to be recorded onto the air. And so with that amazing transition, Allison, this is all you. Take it away with 2 Timothy.
Yeah. So I was too excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first off, how do you feel about the fact that you were assigned 2 Timothy?
I don't have that much of a preference. I've had a stressful week, and so my brain's all over the place. So I feel like I'm all over the place with this text, but I have no hate or love for 2 Timothy.
Because I didn't give you an Old Testament and I didn't give you a Psalm.
Sam catered to me.
I thought about that this time.
Sam catered to me, and I'm very thankful for Sam because I don't like Psalm, and he gave me Lamentations last week.
I did. I tried to make up for it.
I wanted to cry. I called my pastor fiance and as assistants to do my Lamentations text.
Is that the first time you said? Is that the first time you said fiance on Annex? Breaking news to the people who, I mean, everybody who's watching Annex probably knows this.
That's true. I don't know if I've ever said it, but yeah, it's all over the internet. So, so I have 2 Timothy 2:8-15. Like I said a few minutes ago, I feel like I'm all over the place with this. I said this earlier that like I've had a stressful week, and when I'm in a bad mood, like I feel like I don't pull the things out of the text that I showed, or like I pull like I'm like, I'm angry. And so I also took issue with this text. So when I was going through it, it's 2:8-15. And it just, if I'm understanding it right, I was looking at commentaries. It is Paul preaching, his beliefs and all the things, including like that reminder of resurrection, what resurrection means, Jesus giving his life for our sins, all the things. There's a little bit like in verse 9 of like showing kind of the challenge and suffering of being Paul and everything that Paul had gone through. And then, we move on to 10 and it's got that piece of like, why did Paul go through all of that? And it wasn't just for God, but it was also for like his love of God's people. And he wanted to help them. He wanted to see them grow. He wanted to save them in that way. So like, he wasn't just doing it for God, but he was also doing it for the people, which I feel like kind of connects to like our community aspect we were talking about earlier. So just throwing that in there. It's got like nods of eternal glory and what that means in this text. I focused, I think, mostly on like 11-13 and a little bit of 14, mostly 14 actually, but like there's 11 and 13 in there too. So I'm going to read 12 and 13. So 12 is if we have died together. Well, so context, this is like a faithful saying that Paul is saying in this moment. If we have died together, we will also live together. If we endure, we will also rule together. If we deny him, he will also deny us. If we are disloyal, he stays faithful, because it can't be anything else than what he is. And so the first thing I kind of zeroed in on a little bit is like that if we are disloyal, we stay faithful piece. But that's the Common English Bible, and I didn't like it as much as when I was reading. I actually do not remember what translation I was reading, because I opened up Bible Gateway and it didn't bring me to the Common English Bible like it always does. So I read it in a translation I'm not used to reading, and I don't remember what it was, but it said, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. And I liked that like use of faithful in both sentences. Both. It's not even a full sentence with the two of them, with both pieces. Because I feel like I am someone who very much like, I always need those constant reminders that like, no matter what I'm going through, that God is present with us. And so I liked that as that reminder of like, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. So like, if I am ever in such a spot where I'm like questioning my beliefs and I'm questioning God, like knowing that he is still there for me is super helpful. So that was my first like stopping point, was like, I enjoy this little tidbit. And then like we move on to 14, and 14 at first, like, it feels like, it's like, let's remind people of this. Like God is always present no matter what you have going on. And then my brain got a little dark and twisty for people who are familiar with Grey's Anatomy, and I stopped liking it as much. And I don't know, like, if I'm just like overreading it, or if, I don't know. So I started to zero in on 14 a little bit, remind them of these things and warn them in the sight of God, and not to engage in battles over words that aren't helpful and only destroy those who hear them. And I got a little bit stuck because a lot of the commentaries I was reading were saying things like, let me pull it in. They were talking about how like this verse can be used as like saying the church isn't an entertainment piece. It's not a social service. It's not, and like talking about all these things that the church shouldn't be doing. And then my mind flipped to like, like those hot topics in politics and things like that. And that, like, I'm going to say old fashioned, because I feel like it is a little more old fashioned to say like separating church from all those pieces, like all those more hot topics that they're like, we shouldn't be talking about church and politics and overlapping that. But this is where my brain got a little weird, because I especially now in our society, I'm actually a very firm believer that we should be talking about that more in our church spaces, because I'm very much like if we are truly going to love thy neighbor, then I think we need to be talking about the things that are happening in our society and all over the world that is not in the name of loving our neighbor. And like talking about how we can work on those things and fix those things, or if it's not fixable, like how can we be supporting those who are being affected? And so it's like I got stopped there, because I was like, oh, I don't hate this verse. I'm feeling good about it. God is always present when I need him. And then I was like, but why are we so picky in this verse about the words that we should be saying to people and the topics we should be covering? And I could just, like I said, I could just be over reading it. But like I said, I have been to /seen /heard /read different media from different churches where they are talking about those things, and they're talking about Gaza, and they're talking about alligator Alcatraz. There was an article that the Florida United Methodist Church put out a few months ago, talking about churches who were protesting and praying alligator Alcatraz right outside. Like, and they even, so many people showed up that they created, I don't know if they're still doing it, but they created a schedule for like all of August, and they were working on September for regional parts of the state to go to alligator Alcatraz and pray outside of it. And so like, I don't know, I got stopped there, because I was like, am I reading this differently? It just felt very much like, we don't talk about this. Remind people when you're preaching that we don't talk about this. And I was like, why don't we? Like, why aren't we doing more as this like huge collective of people? Why aren't we doing more? And why would we not do it when it is part of, in my opinion, loving your neighbor? I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Okay, Allison, like we said earlier, we're going to talk about the exact same part with very different interpretations of it. And you might have more to say after I say what I'm going to say. Because I also got stuck on 14 and 15, but because I love it. And I don't interpret warn them before. Mine says warn them before God against quarreling about words. It is of no value and only ruins those who listen. I do not at all read that as the church not talking about serious issues. I read that as the opposite, which is that y'all, if I had my mic, I'd bring my mic closer right now. Y'all, there's a lot of shit going on. And now is the time to be having those discussions. So why are we talking about where people are going to sit? Why are we arguing about what songs and what things are going to be put into a servant into what order? Beyond the church, that's my part for the church. Beyond the church, y'all, this is not. Sam's going to speak about the most minor controversy ever, and I'm going to make up maybe a hot take. So if I get canceled for this, let me know. Guys, I was reading about the government shutdown. As of recording this, we are still in a government shutdown. I'm not going to make a statement about the government shutdown. But then I went from that to reading about Hank Green, who I love, who's in a controversy right now with the online knitting community. Y'all, I'm not if all my knitters in the audience, not trying to attack you, but I went from reading about this and like the fact that as a country we're frozen and we don't know where we're going to go, and there's not a conversation but across the aisle anymore, to reading and watching videos reacting to so that I could understand the perspective of the knitting community. Guys, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? And I could give like 1,000 examples of this, of like these extremely important issues that are going on right now in the church, in our nation, in our world. And our talk is not on that. Our talk is on things that are of no value. Allison, I know you're not going to be offended by this, but Allison, I love you. I didn't give a shit that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got engaged. I really couldn't. And I like, for those who are celebrating that, that's one thing, but people were arguing about it. Why are we arguing about it? What's there to argue about? What are we talking about? And so I loved like avoid these quarrels that do absolutely nothing, because there is work that needs to be done. There are conversations that need to be had right now. There are things that need a platform. And we so often, if our attention is our most valuable currency, we spend it on like just bullshit. And there's my little mini rant that I didn't think I was going to get on in this one, but I love verse 14.
I want to add, I'm going to jump back in. One, Sam, the Swiftie in me doesn't care. The Swiftie in me doesn't care. Especially because like people hear I'm a Taylor Swift fan. They're like, oh, so you're going to try to convince me that she's the best person in the world. I'm like, no, listen, I love Taylor Swift. And I said this before we started recording, but what she does with her music is very capitalistic and it drives me crazy. So like I have my own qualms. Anyway, all that aside, I appreciate that because like, so when I'm preparing for Annex, I read a lot of commentaries just because I need that support. And so my opinions and thoughts on this one were heavily commentary led. And so my way of interpreting also could have stemmed from that. Hearing it the way that you're saying it is super helpful because not only do I'm like looking at it in a different light, but also it gives me hope that other people are reading this text and they're interpreting it in the way you are. Does that make sense? They're reading it and they're like, yes, we should be talking about these things. It says it right here.
Exactly. Yeah. Not everybody is going to see this as a silence on important conversations. It should be a focus, a spotlight on it.
Yeah. So I appreciate you throwing that in there because that would be my hope out of all of these things, right? Is that like it's sparking some of that. And so I'm thankful that you added that piece.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because I also don't really care about Taylor Swift and Travis. I was super happy for you though, Allison, because you get to be engaged at the same time as them, and that means a lot for you. And so, and like even in that, because like I did interpret it more on like Sam's side than your side. Verse 14 of like, because okay, so the way that the NRSV UE says it is, remind them of this and warn them before the Lord that they are to avoid wrangling over words, which does no good but only ruins those who are listening. But when it says remind them of this, I'm like, well, what are we reminding them of? Oh, we're reminding them of verse 13, 12 and 13, I guess 11, 12 and 13, that if we've died with him, we will also live with him. If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, he'll deny us. And then I think this might be the version that you saw, because this one says, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. He cannot deny himself. And so that's what we're reminding people of when we have this tendency to like wrangle over words, which I think is like such a fun little way to say that. But it also makes me think of what we're talking about in my New Testament class right now. So it's my upper level New Testament class, so it's like fancy. But it's talking about early Christian women, or women of the early Christian movement, or women's roles in society at the time that these texts were written. And one of the like big virtues at the time was silence, as it pertains to like self-control. Like it all is coming back to self-control. So like modesty is not necessarily like, oh, are you fully covered? But it's like, hey, maybe you didn't need to put on like all 12 of your gold necklaces today. Maybe you could have just put on like 2 or 5, you know? Maybe you didn't need to like super over elaborate everything that you wore. And like, maybe you could be modest about it. Not in the cover yourself up, but in the like, calm the F down. I hope that's a nice, like, appropriate way of saying it for our Studio Wesley Annex guidelines. But like, what if we just like calm down a little bit, you know? And so on this, that's also what I'm getting. Because if silence is also a virtue as it pertains to like knowing when to hold your tongue, or like knowing like when your words like need to come out, or if they're just inside thoughts. And like if you're able to control yourself and to avoid like wrangling over your words, then like I also love verse 15. Well, no, okay, let me finish this thought. So like if we are trying to avoid like wrangling over our words, like if we're trying to avoid like fighting, then it's like, hey, like maybe we can at least like have a discussion about it instead of a heated debate. Right? Because there's plenty of stuff to talk about with like Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And like Allison, you and I have talked about that, right? And like from the Swiftie argument, like you just said, like you're not going to try to convert everybody to become a Swiftie. You're going to be like, oh, no, I actually agree with you about the capitalism part. It's really gross and bad. And I love this album. Right? And so like you have that balance and you're like not wrangling over your words. You're just like having a conversation with people, you know? But what I really love in 15 as well, the way this says it is, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved by him, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly explaining the word of truth. Right? And like, it's so easy to like come at this from a shame stance. And so even when you're presenting yourself to God, you're presenting yourself as if God already approves of you. Because like, what if God already does? I don't know. But it's just a really cutesy, I don't know. I feel affirmed. And like First Timothy, like whoever wrote this, like he spent his time writing about all of the crap that you're not supposed to do and all this everything that you are supposed to do and everything, right?
No, you can say
and
shit.
So to get this little, all the bullshit that we're not supposed to do. And so then it's nice to see this like affirmation in Second Timothy of like, hey, but like this is why, right? Like what if we just all loved each other a lot? What about that? So I don't know. I think it's kind of cute.
So I'm on the same boat as far as 14 and 15. But when I was reading through this, I read the NIV version, or that's the Bible that's in front of me today. But this is kind of off topic, but I really didn't have a whole lot to add to that conversation. But as far as verse, it starts in 8, but it kind of goes into 9. So it says, remember Jesus Christ, raised from the dead, descended from David. This is my gospel, for which I'm suffering even to the point of being chained like a criminal, but God's word is not chained. And I just got stuck on that because I did not like the verbiage of being chained like a criminal. And I've sat with that for a little bit and I was thinking about it. But something that's really important to me that a lot of people may not know is like our prison systems and things. So I did not like that verbiage.
Yes to all of that, because like there's an element of that phrasing of like that's what we should be, that's what you're supposed to be, and that reflects a system, especially our modern judicial system, that is inherently not what it's supposed to be. That's a whole other conversation that I would get into, but we do not have time for me to get into that on this episode. I already ranted once. We're going to go to Luke 17:11-19, which is my text today. And I actually don't have that much. I feel like I gave all my energy to my response to Allison, because I really don't have as much to talk about with this. But this text is about a group of lepers that come to Jesus and ask to be healed, and they stand at a distance, which is really important, talking about like what the societal expectations are, but also what their fear is. They call from a distance and say, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. And he says, go show yourselves to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. And only one of them comes back. He throws himself at Jesus's feet and thanks him. And he was a Samaritan. And Jesus looks around. I'm just going to read the rest of it because it's pretty short. Jesus asked, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Then he said to him, rise and go. Your faith has made you well. And I really like this verse. I really just like Luke as a whole, because Luke really centers on, I was reading commentary about this, Luke really centers on Jesus going to marginalized groups and being specifically for people who are on the outside. And so this story is a segment of a segment. It is people who are already on the outside because of their disease and because of their health status. But then the person who is on the outside of that, who is the Samaritan, who has this confluence of identities. What's the word I'm looking for? What's that word? Oh my God, there's a word.
Can you give the definition again?
Intersectionality. Okay, so we're gonna pull out. Come on, guys. I go to poli-sci school. But like the intersectionality, the intersection of these like identities that all have their own stigmas against them. And so I think it's really beautiful that like the metaphor of he is the person to come back. But also I don't know, I struggle a little bit with the like what you should do is like come back and throw yourself and say you're not worthy. I think giving respect and thanks for what has been given to you, especially getting through hard times, is one thing, but the like expectation of like, being ungrateful, I don't know, I struggle with that. And even as I say that, I don't fully believe that, because I do think we should be grateful, especially when we're taken through hardships, and we should honor God in that. But it's the phrasing of it, of like only this foreigner is the one to do it, and it's like, okay, but also like I believe that's part of why Jesus healed these people, is because they were on the margins. And to be like, and this marginalized person is the only one to do it, feels a little bit, maybe that is a modern way of reading it. But I like the story as a whole. I'll try to include it in the episode description if I can. I'm gonna have to do a link to it. But there's a really beautiful painting I saw in one of the commentaries that depicts the scene and depicts the people celebrating behind the lepers celebrating behind Jesus. And I think it's an interesting metaphor. I don't have that much to say with it, so I want to see if y'all point out anything different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, like the part of like the expectation of deep like Thanksgiving, right? Because on one hand, it's like only one person, like that's 10%, only one person out of those 10 like said thank you once he realized that he was healed, right? And so on one hand, I'm like, oh, I forget to say thank you all the time. I forget, and then it keeps me up at night, and then it keeps me up the next night, and then I tell my therapist about it, and then we wonder what I could do otherwise, like but I do think there's something significant, like even just the like narration or the like narrative element, because I wonder if those were the words that came out of Jesus's mouth, or if this is like another like narrative opportunity, because like I don't know, I'm picturing like a crowd of people, and I don't know who else was around Jesus, right? Because this is like on the outskirts of the community, because that, of course it was, because that's what it had to be. So that everybody stayed like healthy and well and blah blah blah. But I don't know, I'm picturing people who are like nearby, and Jesus is like, really? Only this Samaritan man apologized or said thank you. Interesting. Like, I don't know. Again, we just talked about that, not this specific text in New Testament, but we talked about this in terms of like, what do you do when something is not redeemable? Or like, what do you do when like the text just like sucks? And I don't think this is a text that just like completely sucks, right? Like, I think it's still really beautiful. But I think there is something significant about like being in community and like recognizing the like one Jesus seeking community, and like allowing these 10 people to like rejoin the community, or like rejoin the large group, instead of being like on their own together, but on their own. And then there's something about like this man who turned around to say thank you once again, like recognizing like, oh my God, literally, oh my God. But like, oh my God, like I'm part of community now. So let me like be proactive in that and go ahead and connect with this person who chose to connect with me. I don't know. I really love this passage, but that part that you mentioned, Sam, also just like gets me. And I don't know how I feel about that. But overall, I do really, really love this. And I think that this says a lot about like how we should be interacting with each other and like in how we should be inviting each other and doing what we can to enable folks.
So I really do agree with both of you. Something that I kept thinking about as y'all were speaking was just when I was growing up, my mom always taught me like when you give to people or like when you help others, you don't do it for like your own personal satisfaction or your own recognition. And every time you help someone or do something for the community, you shouldn't expect to be like honored or glorified for it. So I definitely can see and I'm there too, of like, why didn't everybody turn around and thank me and bow down at my feet? I just think it is a weird and awkward way to put that last bit of the text together, because I don't think God would have been seeking out like the fame and the glory from helping others.
I appreciate that piece, Caitlyn, too. And then I said too, as if I've said that to anyone else this segment. My plant lights have turned off. The signal said it's the end of the day. In relation, but not in relation to what everybody's saying too, is I got stuck on like the negativity of it all. Like we are so, not us, but the text is so centered in on the fact that this only one person came back. And what about everybody else? As opposed to like, oh my gosh, this one person came back. Like I'm so stuck on like focusing on the negative in this situation and not focusing on like the one person who did return. Like they got nothing. They just got, where's everyone else? Why isn't everybody else thanking me? And like, that's where I'm stuck on this is like, I don't know, I've said it like 3 times already, but it's just, there are other things for us to focus on, I think. Like, not us, for the text to focus on, but instead it was just like, you guys didn't come back.
And also, I don't want to keep hammering home the same point as we end this episode, but like, Allison, to your point, like there's so many other things going on. Also, 9 people just got healed. And sorry if I've lived on the outskirts of society my whole life because I have a disease that might kill me and it goes away. I'm probably going to do a couple of things before I come back and apologize. Or thank someone.
You got to live.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, and that's why the painting, if I can show it in the description, maybe Mike, I'm gonna show it right here. Mike, if that's not something you could do on the visual, you could tell me, but we're going to try it. Audio listeners,
we all put our hands up. If all of our hands go up, can we make it full screen?
Yeah, it's gonna be right here. But the painting that I like has like all of them celebrating in the background, and I just think that's a really, even though that's not what the text is saying, the right thing to do is, that feels so human, and I just like that. I just like that response. And with this crazy episode where everybody's at different places, Caitlyn, you get to close us out. Take it away, Caitlyn.
Dear God, I just want to thank you for this time I was able to spend with my dear friends, and I hope that everyone listening is blessed and we maybe can help them work their way through your text. I just hope that you continue to keep us all safe and help us grow in you. Amen.
Amen. And with that, I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank these beautiful people for being on this episode with me. It's been a really good one. I'm glad we could all have this. And with that, all God's people are going to say bye.
Bye.
Bye.